So thank you so much for joining. So this session is the wild world of sports gambling. We're joined by Dan Trolaro, who is the Vice President of Prevention US at Epic Risk Management. I want to again thank you so much for joining in. As I mentioned before, I'm going to be including some information in the chat box, and I will be kind of repeating it for those that are coming in a little later. My name is Amanda Quintana. I'm with the New York Council on Problem Gambling. You'll notice my name begins with staff. So again, if you have any questions, please feel free to send a message in the chat. I'll be here during the entire session in case anybody has any technology issues or questions. If you need any assistance or have questions from the presenter, please type them in the chat box at any time. We'll be doing a Q&A session at the end, and we'll be recording questions as we go along, holding them until that time. So without further ado, I am going to turn things over to Dan. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Amanda, and good afternoon, everyone. It is morning where I am. I am staring at the beautiful Franklin Mountains in southeastern New Mexico. I've been out here for a few days and heading back later on today, right after this session. So I'm from the hotel room. I've got myself set up nicely on an ironing board with a suitcase and my laptop propped up on it, facing the window for good lighting. We have a lot to cover today, and we're talking about the world of sports betting. And it is a wild world of sports betting.
Oh no.
Okay, thanks. Take care. Bye-bye.
Dan, are you there? It seems we're having a bit of technical difficulties. Give us one moment as we can figure them out. Isn't that the fun of the Zoom world? I know we've all experienced enough technical issues as we are working through this. Let's see, it looks like Dan has left and he's going to work to re-engage. I really appreciate your patience as we get through it. Yes, right. It does keep us in touch with our sense of humor and patience. I feel like of all times that I should have a good knock-knock joke in my back pocket.
Hi, everybody. It seems like we lost Dan. Oh, here he comes. The slides will be available afterwards. We'll send you guys a link for conference materials. The recording will be available. You might have to find him on the list again. Okay. All right.
We're back.
Oh, you're muted.
Okay, I'm back.
There we go. Yay.
So there's been a sand and windstorm the last day and a half, and I don't know if that has something to do with it.
It's possible.
Okay, so here we go. Share sound, share screen, get back to our PowerPoint. So where do we leave off? Welcome. I'm coming in from New Mexico today. So we have quite a bit to cover and a short amount of time, even a little shorter to do it now. So let me get into the slideshow here. The world of sports betting is rapidly expanding. Amanda, are you good seeing my screen?
Yep, you're back on.
Excellent, thank you. So let's get right into the information here. And if I do cut off, please do let me know. So what's happening right now in the New York sports betting environment? Well, we're going to focus today on the online world, because from an online perspective, this is the area that
is owned by the Jets or a partner with the Jets.
Just a reminder, if everyone can just.
I thought the Giants were in on DraftKings.
Please mute your self if you're not muted already. Thank you all. On September 14th of 2021, WinBet was named an official partner of the New York Jets, and they will have a luxury lounge at MetLife Stadium. I guess when you go to watch the Jets play, at least you can enjoy something other than their football performance. In October 19th, just last week, the New York State Gaming Commission is moving quicker than expected to get those licenses approved for 5 operators. This really paves the way for New York to have legalized online sports betting in time for the Super Bowl. And that will be huge. We know the tax rates are high, but we also know the demand for sports betting in New York is really strong because a lot of New Yorkers have been coming over to New Jersey to place their bets, going across the GW, going through the tunnels, over to Fort Lee, over to Jersey City to place legal online sports bets, which has been legal in New Jersey since 2018. Once New York legalizes sports betting, the dynamic is totally going to shift, and it'll be really interesting to see the revenue numbers and the figures. What are some of those emerging trends in sports gambling? Something I love to talk about when we talk about prevention, I think it's always important to understand what do we need to kind of keep an eye on the horizon. Well, here's what we see, the top 7, and there's more, but I just wanted to handpick 7 because we only have a short window of time today. Online gambling is sweeping the country. You know, over 11 states right now have legalized, authorized forms of online gambling or legislation in the works, and it's growing on a daily, weekly, and monthly basis. In-play betting is a big driver of sports betting in the online market space. You may have heard of in-play betting. It's also called micro betting. It's about making several small bets during the course of a game. And I'm not just talking about prop bets, that's a separate issue. But I'm talking about what's going to happen in the next 90 seconds, what's going to happen in the next drive of a football game. Micro betting is becoming increasingly popular. Last minute betting is a function of micro betting. And what that really focuses on is the last maybe 2 minutes of an NBA contest, the last drive of a football game, where certain sportsbook operators will offer enhanced odds boosts to try to engage a customer to make those last second bets. What you really see with sports betting, it's not just the outcome of the game any longer. Back years ago, you know, in my previous life when I was gambling on a daily basis, having been now in recovery since February 11th of 2010, I no longer gamble. But when I was betting on sports, it was all about the outcome of the game. Now, the outcome does not matter. It's about what's going to happen in the next 3 minutes, 5 minutes, or 7 minutes. And if we look at this behaviorally and cognitively, when we're rapidly reinforcing a result or an expected outcome, that can start to lead to an overactivation of certain habit centers in the brain, which for some can lead to addiction. And I think that's what we really have to be careful of here, whether we're clinicians, whether we're peer support specialists, whether we're people who like to gamble for fun and we're kind of exploring the new world of online gambling. You can find yourself wrapped up in this quicker and quicker, a much easier way. I have a video I'm going to show momentarily about what's actually going on inside the brain of someone who gambles with a rapid reward schedule. Other emerging trends, prop betting, right? What color will the Gatorade be when they dump it on the winning coach's head to Super Bowl? These are familiar props. The best odds in betting is always the coin toss on the Super Bowl. You talk about the amount of money that changes hands before the game even starts. It's a 50-50 chance. It's either heads or tails. Last time I checked, those are the only 2 sides of a coin. So those are the best odds you'll find. But there's also some other interesting trends. Player tracking technology. You're starting to see fabric and companies designing fabric and equipment and clothing that will detect perspiration levels in athletes. This is all with the goal of evaluating player fitness and health. So if I'm determining whether or not I want to make a last minute bet on the final drive of a football game, but I see that the running back who's in the game is dehydrated, is not in optimal health, I might want to bet on the defense. That is the level of granularity that a gambler will go to try to any little bit of edge or any bit of information. Information is power in the world of sports gambling. Esports betting, another emerging trend. We're seeing more and more operators approving and allowing the betting of esports, which is competitive video gaming in real time. That is live streamed, and you can bet on teams. You know, with all of these expansions of gambling, we have to always be mindful of integrity. And that is a huge issue. We have to make sure that the data is secure, that there's no inside information being leaked, and because that will impact and really undermine the growth of the sports gambling market. And then lastly, you have artificial intelligence and sports forecasting. These are websites that are using AI to help make winning picks. Come sign up for our subscription service and we'll give you the guaranteed winner. But a lot of these sites, they pick both sides of the contest. So they're right 50% of the time, they're wrong 50% of the time, but they're still making revenue. And people will buy a winning pick looking for any kind of edge or angle. But here's what we know about gambling addiction. It's hidden. You can't see it. If you give someone a urine screen for gambling, they're not going to pee dice. Nothing's coming out of their body. There's no positive urine screen like there is for substance use disorder. And what makes gambling so difficult to abandon is that the intermittent reward schedule is so powerful. Anyone on this workshop today that has gambled has probably won something. It may not be a lot of money, but you've experienced the feeling of winning something. The problem with abandoning that behavior is threefold. You don't know how much, how often, or when it will occur next. But you just know that when it does occur, it feels really good. And so you continue to chase not the money, you chase the feeling. And that is one of the big drivers of a person who starts to develop a gambling problem, is they're chasing that internal physiological chemical response, which is also rooted in biology, genetics, society, environment. There's so many factors that go into addiction, but it's hidden and you can't see it. Gambling and dopamine, it's that chemical that goes on inside the brain. Dopamine is that chemical that anchors our learning, that says, wow, that feels good. Let me do that again. It blocks pain. When we talk with older adults who gamble, and I recall a time I was speaking at a senior center in New Jersey, and there was an older woman in there, and she loved bingo, and she would play bingo, and her hands were flying all around the board. But when the gambling and the bingo stopped, the arthritis set back in. You see, during bingo, her pain was blocked by the excitement and thrill of the gambling. That's the dopamine serving as a pain blocker. Gambling can help people alleviate pain, escape a negative state, can help deal with problems, and can help fill a joy and excitement and action. Sharing a personal story, as we're here at the New York conference, 20 years ago is when I started really getting into some gambling problems, because it was after September 11th when I was working downtown, working for Goldman Sachs in my previous life in finance and economics. And I was sitting on the 40th floor of my office building downtown, about a quarter mile from the towers. And I watched that second plane hit the towers. I ran towards the building with my managing director because his wife was on the 86th floor. So we were going to see if we could find her. And as I was running towards the towers, I saw people jumping from windows 60, 70, 80 stories up. Saw bodies hitting the pavement about 50 feet away from me. Lost 14 friends and 2 later to suicide after September 11th. And gambling was the thing that I did, because I learned it at an early age, that gave me joy, that allowed me to escape, and allowed me to not deal with life for a while. And those are the things we need to consider when we're talking about gambling addiction. We need to evaluate adverse childhood experiences, PTSD, trauma. And then when you layer on the rapid reinforcement and the accessibility of internet gambling on a smartphone or a mobile device, for some people, it's a recipe for disaster. That being said, and I always want to be very clear on this, for me, I'm against gambling for myself. I know I do not have a healthy relationship with it, but in general, I'm neutral on gambling, neither for nor against. There are people who can enjoy it as a positive experience, entertainment, but for people who start to develop problems, we need to make sure resources are available, and we need to stay educated on what they might be facing so we can best help them get the support and treatment, not that they need, but that they deserve as human beings. What's going on inside the brain of a person with a gambling problem? I'm going to share this video. If the sound does not, please do let me know. I believe I did share sound when I logged back in. The BBC did a 4-minute video, and they placed a person with a gambling problem inside an MRI scanner, and they tracked his brain while he was playing roulette. Take a look and see.
It's getting me excited already.
We arranged for gambler Tony Franklin to join a unique experiment by one of the world's leading experts on addiction, Professor David Nutt.
No, it's a mistake.
Gambling addiction is not a failure of will. It is a brain disorder which is preyed upon by the gambling industry.
Honestly, I can feel my heartbeat just rising, just looking at the damn thing.
Once you become addicted, it's very, very hard to stop because you've changed your brain. Addiction is a brain that has changed to become entrained to the desires of the gambling.
So we're going to start the roulette task, Tony.
This will be the first time anyone plays something similar to a fixed odds betting terminal from inside an MRI scanner. The professor says it will reveal what's happening in Tony's brain as he uses a keypad to bet.
Got £1,000 to spend. Can I spend it all on the first spin?
When Tony is doing his task, when he's looking at the roulette wheel and he's making a decision to bet, parts of the brain get turned on and then they can't stop. And we think there's probably a chemical basis to that. So that's what we're expecting to see, that the habit centers are overactivated in people with gambling compared with normal people like us. The brain's not very active. Maybe a little bit here, he's thinking at the, what shall I do? But it's pretty calm. Contrast that with what happens in the next one. And
That's a huge difference from
indeed
there to there.
Exactly.
So that's in a matter of seconds as well, would it be?
Exactly.
Or...
Absolutely, yes.
Okay.
So here we see the visual system, the back of the brain here, intensely activated. He's watching really closely. He wants that ball bearing to come down on his color. And now we look at the emotional regions. And these are different regions activated. This is the anterior cingulate cortex. This is the insular. And these are the two areas of the brain which make sense of emotions. They may generate the emotion he's feeling of excitement. Will I win? Won't I win? And here we see a very similar picture. In fact, the only real difference between winning and anticipating is this area here. And this is an area where I think we see the sense of satisfaction. Yeah, I've won. That's good. Register that. Start again. But overall, winning and waiting to see if you've won, the anticipation, they're both pretty much the same. And that's a really key point about gambling. It's not just the winning that counts. It's the taking part. And the taking part repeatedly when you don't win is as activating to a gambler as the winning. When you're sitting in a fixed odd terminal, you're getting this every 20
Constant.
seconds.
Yeah.
So you can have hundreds of them. And so that process can become, in the end, it becomes kind of
It's
habitual.
not just the winning that matters. That is so key. And why do I show that? They're talking about a roulette wheel, but what does internet gambling provide? In-play, micro betting, slot machines, right? But specific to sports, they all provide that rapid reward schedule. So when you're getting that participation, that anticipation, that activity every 10, 20, 30 seconds, that process becomes habitual and can become addictive for some. And that's a really key point, as he mentions about gambling. So that's something we really need to keep in mind as we talk about the wild world of sports gambling. It's not just the 3-hour time window from the start of the game to the end of the game. You know, that was almost a form of protection for the gambler. You have 3 hours to wait for an outcome, right? There was a time element there. But now you don't have to wait for the outcome. Micro betting. But the same applies in other areas, right? Season-long fantasy sports is now daily fantasy sports. Instead of waiting a whole season to determine a winner, you can draft a new team every day in various sports on many of the operator sites. Long-term stock market investing is now being replaced by day trading, scalping, right? Short-term reward schedule. Ordering packages 6 to 8 weeks for delivery is now replaced by same-day Amazon. It goes on across everything. It's this inability to delay gratification. We need it now, we want it our way, and we want it quickly. So what are some of the reasons for disordered gambling as we start seeing people fall down the trap? I mean, we talk about being biopsychosocial. There's so many components, but just a couple of key observations is that for some people with a disorder, with a gambling disorder, they're escaping problems. They have a problem they don't know how to deal with. They don't want to deal with it. They're not sure what steps to take, so they escape. Just like people do with drugs and with alcohol and other things, exercise, work, could be any number of things. There also could be some trauma, some anxiety. It's a coping strategy. But also the big win early is one of those predictors we have to be careful of. If you have a young person who wins a lot of money at an early age, or remember, big wins doesn't always have to be about money. I challenge you to think that a big win for a young person could be spending time with family. A lot of young people might see gambling as the thing that brings family together, and it's a good unifying time. They may not win much money at all, but they have fond recollections of gambling amongst the family members, and they plant that seed when they're young, and when they get older, they see gambling in a positive light. It's this thing that makes them feel good because it brought them closer together, relationship building. And then we always have to be aware of the developing brain. Brain finishes developing on average late 20s, mid to late 20s, assuming no other prior neurological disorder or disruption. Also, we're talking about substance use disorder in gambling. We have to be aware that if you're treating clients with substance use disorder, 61% of people with a gambling problem also have an alcohol use problem, as well as nicotine dependency. So we have to be very careful, as well as our veterans who've served our country, PTSD and trauma. So as we talk about sports gambling and expansion, let's take a look at three key factors that we're starting to see an uptick in, especially since COVID. Marketing, funding sources, and data and content partnerships. These are all areas that helps get the message about sports betting out into the public view a lot faster. Let's take a look at marketing. Well, marketing, we have to be careful of. Marketing matters. Our young people are seeing gambling as this fun activity with very low risk. Why do I say that? I think any one of us on this workshop today has seen an advertisement or a marketing piece for a sportsbook operator that says bet $1, and if someone throws a strike in tonight's World Series, you win $100. I mean, that's just insane, right? It's basically free money. You're just getting that. And so a person who maybe has a distorted view of sports betting might say, this is easy. I'm already going to get the $100 and now I can just start betting. And it's not risk-free. And this is a big issue we have right now across the United States, is that term risk-free is very dangerous because it sets the perception that there's no harm that can come of this. But for some people that take that risk-free bet, especially post-COVID, people dealing with anxiety, trauma, people dealing with depression, people looking to kind of deal with thoughts and feelings that they're still kind of process, this can be an easy way to escape. We did a project with Seton Hall University last year, and when they polled these students on campus and off campus, I would say about 40% of students did not see sports gambling as a form of gambling. They saw it as an easy way to make money and a side job. That's when you look at gambling as a side job, you're setting yourself up to become financially fragile. And that's a term we've started looking at and using. I was just on a conference call yesterday with an organization out of Colorado, and we're looking to start doing some research around gambling and financial fragility across the United States post-COVID. And is this something we need to be aware of? We need more financial literacy amongst our youth. They need education. They need to understand appropriate risks and inappropriate risks and different coping skills. But the finances is a key part. If we can educate financial literacy early on, by the time they're 21 and they're gambling legally, they have a different view of money. They have a different view of risk taking. And that might help organically over time reduce the rates or the potential for problem gambling, right? We're always going to see problem gambling, but this could help reduce the potential from our future generations. We need to plan now for our future generations. Marketing also attracts new players. There's generally a lack of restrictions on marketing, which means that, yes, they have certain things they have to include. They have to include a gambling helpline oftentimes. They have to include some language about the terms and conditions, but the font size is super small. Let's be honest. If you're trying to read what the terms and conditions are on some of these, I mean, it's comical, quite honestly, at times. And there is a challenge in the United States because many states have their own helpline. There is a lack of a national or federal policy on some of these topics, such as a national helpline, such as a national self-exclusion list. So those things are in the works. There are things in the works is what I'll say right now to kind of help streamline that. Marketing can also be a trigger for return to use. I've heard many times someone who stopped gambling only to receive a marketing offer to rejoin, to redeposit, we'll give you a comp, or go down to the brick and mortar. And that could be a trigger for someone who's trying to stop. That's why self-exclusion is a viable and really important resource. It not only blocks access, it also stops the marketing. And if someone markets to a person on a self-exclusion list, that can be escalated and that operator can be fined. But that's vital. And marketing also glamorizes the good side of gambling. All the times the person has won. I remember during COVID sitting on my couch in New Jersey and I was working remotely. And I remember turning on News 12 or whatever it was. And there's this casino, I don't remember which operator it was. It's a guy who says, I was sitting on my couch with literally nothing to do. So I jumped on online, I won $17,000. I wish I could sit on my couch with literally nothing to do. I don't think that ever happens, quite honestly, but that glamorizes it. What about the funding sources? Since COVID, there's a big push now on cashless and touchless transactions. And that is a little concerning because we start to see people process money differently when it's electronic versus when it's physical cash. If you can see the chips, even on a casino floor, if you have a stack of chips in front of you and you're seeing them decrease, you're going to change your betting pattern. When it's electronic, you don't see it. If you're not getting notifications of money spent, if you're not paying attention, the money disappears very quickly. And then you can just reload on your debit or credit card. So it's ease of access, ease of funding. We're also starting to see the toes dipping in the water of using crypto and alt currency. Now, that's a whole nother, that's not financially backed. It's not financially regulated. That's a whole new emerging market is the crypto market. Even betting on the crypto market, buying things like Dogecoin and Shiba Inu and all these different alt currencies. People are looking for fast money, action, escape, and there's so much availability because you'll talk to someone down the hall from you or your next door neighbor, and they'll talk about how much they made on Bitcoin. They'll talk about how they got in on Tesla at an early stage. Everyone's always looking for the next Tesla. It doesn't happen. Statistically speaking, it doesn't happen. Fast money spends fast. That's something I learned a long time ago. Fast money spends fast. How about the data and content? Who owns the data? This is a big issue right now because if you're talking about in-play sports betting, data drives a lot of the odds and a lot of the lines that determines the micro betting. Plus, there's even been some rustlings around the players. Listen, the players are the ones who are producing the data. What are they entitled to? They already get a salary, I understand that. But now we're starting to see players want to be compensated. Players want to be compensated for their performance. We're seeing this at the NCAA level. That's new, that's emerging. Players can now be compensated for likeness. That's still a whole developing situation, but that's never been done historically. So we're starting to see players start to, I don't want to say the word revolt, but they're starting to push back, say, hey, what's our cut in all of this? Sports betting is a huge multi-billion-dollar market. There's a lot of money to go around to a lot of different people, and everyone wants their slice. Is the data reliable? We have to always be aware of integrity issues. When I was out here in Sunland Park, I was doing some operator training, working with a couple of the horsemen also. They had a huge integrity issue. And as a matter of fact, in 2022, there's going to be federal and national policy around horse racing, which will help level the playing field because each state determines different level of chemicals that can be used with horses and medications, and that can lead to an unfair competitive advantage. And so there's finally going to be some level playing ground now in the horse racing industry. It'll be interesting to see what happens in the sports betting world if over time there's more federal or national oversight. So we've talked about some of the emerging trends. We talked about the marketing and the data and the payment, but what are some of those structural characteristics we need to pay attention to? The top two right now are the ones I mentioned before. I made mention of in-play, also called micro betting, and the cash out feature, early cash out. But what do they really look like and how do they work? So in-play sports betting, I think in-play does have the potential to be more harmful because of the structural characteristics, because of that rapid reinforcement, because you could make tens or dozens or hundreds of micro bets throughout a game, not really caring about what the outcome is. As a matter of fact, Dr. Mark Griffiths, once in a research study in 2007 made the observation that in-play sports betting is crucial in the acquisition, the maintenance, and development of online gambling behaviors. Because of that rapid reinforcement, it's that large number of bets throughout a game instead of just one bet on the outcome. And as I mentioned before, that's just like daily fantasy sports instead of season long. So we're starting to see that. And also there's this concept of this fear of missing out, the FOMO, right? Fear of missing out. I don't want to miss the next play. I'm going to have to stay super engaged in the game. And I want to bet on it. I want to have action on it. People can't just enjoy sport for the sport. Who else would watch the Cleveland Browns play the Cincinnati Bengals on a random Sunday? You can always tell the people who have action on a game on the most obscure sports that they watch. During COVID, we had people that were betting on Belarusian soccer, table tennis out of Russia. They were betting on the Korean Baseball League, the KBO. I mean, and then you talk to some people and they say, yeah, I did my research. Really? You've researched Russian ping pong? What do you know about Russian ping pong players? Is there a document? Is there a website that does this? I have no idea. So that will be the lengths and the extent that people will go to. In-play sports betting is big in this illusion of control because the gambler can now think that they're controlling. And this is why those college students don't see this as harmful or a way of gambling, because they are dictating the speed of the bets. They're dictating how much money they bet. They're dictating how many number of bets they make. They feel as if they're in control of all of this. So it's not gambling. It's a side job. It's all skill. And that's very dangerous. And that's why that can contribute to maintaining the gambling problem. In-play sports wagering leads to high speed and continuous reinforcement. It's almost like social media. You know, when you post something on social media, whether it's Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, whatever it is, you check back periodically to see if anybody liked it. Did anyone make a comment? That's even better if someone commented, as long as it's positive, right? But you're looking to see, is it relevant? Did it get a lot of eyes? Did it reach the intended audience and then get shared? Did it go viral, right? These are all things, and that produces dopamine, right? It's these little microbursts of dopamine. The same thing can be applied in-play sports wagering. When you win these bets, they're little microbursts of dopamine. It's like completing the next level in a video game. Yes, that feels good. Register that. On to the next level. It's the anticipation. It's the participation. It's not just the winning that matters. And that can lead to the preoccupation, the isolation, and the immersiveness. Now, here's my man, Howie Mandel. What does he have to do with early cash out? Well, for any of you on here that have watched Deal or No Deal, that's what early cash out feature is. So let's say on November 13th of 2018, we're sitting here and we've got a wager that I placed way back in August, okay? And I said the Rams are going, I'm gonna bet $130 on the Rams to win $100, okay? That's what minus 130 means. So now, if I let this bet go to completion and the Rams win the division at the end of the football season, I win $230. But if I choose to close that bet out now and take my cash now, I'll get $212.07. For any of you that are in this workshop that are finance or economics, it's the present value of a future expected return. I'm going to take a little bit less now as opposed to letting time pass and getting my full amount at the end. So if I let it go to the end and the Rams don't win the division, I lose my $130. But if I take my bet and close it out now and the Rams win the division, I only get $212. So my opportunity cost is about $18 here. I'm taking $18 less, right? What do you decide? And that's just like Deal or No Deal. Do you want to keep opening those suitcases? Because the banker is going to give you an offer. And as the game changes, if you remove the wrong cases, that offer might go down, right? If the Rams start losing games and you continue to keep this bet open, your cash out number will drop because the likelihood of it winning is less and less. So it's a discounted present value from a future expected return. That's what early cash out is. But look at how it was marketed on betfair.com. Cash out lets you take your profit early if your bet is coming in, or get some of your stake back if your bet is going against you, right? You didn't make a bad choice. It's just the bet was going against you. And that's all before the event is over. Cash out offers are made in real time based on live market prices. I see the words real time and live market prices. The first thing I think of is day trading, investing, skillful money management. This does not lend itself to the traditional form or thinking, excuse me, around gambling. This is now changing the thinking through the marketing from gambling to investing, from skill-based gambling to skillful money management. And this is what our younger people and our newer gamblers and the world of online sports betting could contain. And that's where some of the problems lie, is when people are using features like this, they don't see the harm. So as we summarize this, before I have one more video to show and talk about some resources, we've talked today about early cash out, in-play micro betting, emerging trends, and we've done this in a very short period of time with one technology disruption, thankfully. We're talking about illusion of control, skill versus luck. A lot of gamblers think that their skill plays a role in how they do. They just don't understand that a lot of gambling, it's randomness, it's luck. I remember being on a cruise ship about 3 years ago, and I was in my cabin and I was going through all the papers, and one of the flyers was for a skill-based slot machine tournament. And I looked at the flyer and I said, how the heck is it a skill-based slot machine tournament? So I go down to the casino floor and I go to the cage and I see a worker there and I say, who's in charge of responsible gambling on the cruise ship? The guy looked at me like I had three heads. He's like, what do you mean responsible gambling? Just don't spend much. And I said, no. I said, who puts this flyer together? He says, I don't know, Carnival does. I said, do you see anything wrong with this? He said, no, it's a slot tournament. We do them all the time. I said, it says skill. And he says, I don't know, buddy. I don't know. Just go have fun. That's what he told me to do. So I realized I wasn't going to get anywhere with this guy. So I got back and I wrote a little letter to Carnival and the Cruise Line International Association. And, I didn't hear back, right? But the thing is, you can't have a skill-based slot machine tournament because the word skill is misused there. All you're doing is pulling the handle or pushing a button. There was no other game. There was nothing else. It wasn't a fancy new game where you're shooting things, nothing. There was no skill whatsoever. So gamblers have this preconceived notion that what they're doing isn't really gambling sometimes. Sometimes they just think it's skill-based. Also, the intermittent reinforcement, we talked about that. When you win every so often, it feels good, but it's not just the winning. It's the anticipation and the participation. We see social proofing. We see other people are doing it. And if they're having fun and if they're not experiencing harms that we can see, we must think it's okay. And that is critical to gambling addiction. If I'm talking to you and I don't see you staggering, I don't smell your breath, I don't see any type of disruptions in your life, you're still getting up and going to work, well, then they must be okay. But we know so many people suffer in silence with gambling, the hidden addiction. The scarcity principle, act now, act fast. That's when you start looking at those last minute wagers, the in-play betting where something's closing soon, you've got to make a fast decision. Maybe there's an odds boost that you want to take advantage of. It all preys on the human psyche of scarcity principle. I don't want to miss out. I better act now and I better act quickly. And the whole thing that drives gambling is that near miss. That's the hook. You talk about the hook of gambling, it's the near miss. I'm so close. It felt so good to be so close. Let me do that thing again. So gambling, we always think about the excitement, the entertainment. Some people use it to escape. For some people, it's about the economics. And there's also a large part of it that's about the ego for people who struggle with gambling disorder. Our perfect storm of gambling, when we talk about people developing problems, we have to always understand age, when it first starts with the prefrontal cortex still developing, the availability, which is rapidly expanding, the acceptability, it's socially and culturally acceptable to gamble in most areas. There are certain cultures where gambling is frowned upon. Doesn't mean it doesn't happen. It just might mean it stays even hidden even more. Advertising and marketing, we talked about that, and access. There is more and more access to credit, cash, and financial products financial literacy is a must for this new emerging population that is entering the world to become legalized gamblers by the age of 21 in a world where sports betting and technology is dominating. We need to educate our youth now. When we talk about recovery resources, I want to show this, and I want to close with one video before we go to question and answer. So what do we do? What do we do if we know of someone who has a problem? We have people on this workshop from all around the country. So, in the New York area, the New York Council on Problem Gambling does an amazing job. I am so blessed and thankful to have great relationships and partners with so many of the people here today. They have tremendous resource centers broken down by region. It's so easy to find on the web. Google it, NewYorkProblemGamblingHelp.org, click on the region, and get the person who needs help over to someone who can talk with them and immediate assistance. You have local or regional helplines. You have 800 Gambler in New Jersey that also answers for dozens of states around the country. You have 877-8-HOPE-NY. You have the National Council on Problem Gambling's helpline, 800-522-4700. You've got GA or Gamanon for mutual aid support, and I'll come back to Gamanon in a moment. There's also been a wonderful website that popped up during COVID. It's called gamblersinrecovery.com. This is a link that when you type it in and you visit this website, you will find help for the gambler and help for the loved ones. And then when you click on that button, you will find a list of Zoom meetings, just like we're on today, with maybe a passcode. You can enter a meeting from all around the world. I was on a meeting a few months ago out of Ireland. I didn't understand due to the thick accent, but let me tell you what I did understand. I understood tears and I understood sorrow. That's all you need to understand from someone who is struggling. So gamblersinrecovery.com is a great resource, especially if there's uncertainty about which rooms might be physically open or in person as things are opening, or maybe some rooms never reopened because of the pandemic. This is another great resource. You have a host of national podcasts. You have All In, the Addicted Gamblers podcast with Brian Hatch. You have the one, and I have to do a shameless plug here, in New York. Craig Carton and I do one every Saturday morning at 9:30. Live streamed, and then it's downloaded on a podcast. It's called Hello, My Name is Craig. That's another great one where we just talk about problem gambling and recovery. EAPs, counselors, you have programs like Addictions Victorious and Smart Recovery, but resources for the family are vital. We cannot forget about the loved ones who struggle and suffer when they have another loved one going through a gambling addiction. And with that in mind, I want to show, as we close out here, a video out of Australia that was one of the top PSAs in terms of supporting family members and showing how problem gambling can impact the loved ones. Take a look at this, and then we'll turn it over for Q&A.
My husband has a problem with gambling. I've given up trying to fix it. It's just what our life is now. Sometimes I feel like I'm stuck in a room and I can't get out.
My son gambles. I sometimes wonder if it's my fault. Was it something I did, or maybe something I didn't do? It's affecting everything. Actually, I'm a bit embarrassed that it's got this bad.
My dad gambles a lot. He thinks I don't know about it, but I do. I've known something was going on for a while now. It's like I see my friends' parents, and it's like a whole other world than mine. I mean, it's nothing special, it's just, I don't know, normal? I want normal.
My other kids don't say anything about it anymore. And it's not the kind of thing I discuss with friends. Well, everyone's got their own problems. I would like to think that my son could take control himself. But no, it's not that simple. And gambling's everywhere you look these days.
I used to get my hopes up that things would change. I used to think we'd wake up one day and everything would be better. But I know it's not going to happen. I've thought about talking to Mum, but it's like, if I'm okay, then she's okay. But I know she's not. she's not okay.
The gambling makes life hard, but it's the loneliness that really gets to me. I don't want to talk to anyone else about it because I don't want anyone else to know. I know that he's hurting. I don't want to have to choose, but the kids have to be my number one priority.
That video, which is, I get a little teary-eyed every time I see that, because you just see the hurt and the shame that the loved ones are dealing with. They need support too. So I want to thank you for to the New York Council, to everyone on this workshop today, for your patience at the very start where we had a little minor technical difficulty, but I think we rallied really well. And I hope you took some good stuff away from today. And now we have about 10 minutes or so, I believe, for some Q&A. So thank you all.
Wow, I don't know about everyone else, but this has been phenomenal. I want to start off with a question actually with this last video. I know that the slides will be shared, but Dan, many are asking if they can download this video themselves to share with others.
Yeah, I have to go back and figure out where I found it. I want to say it's as simple as YouTube. I would love to think that. And I think it was gambling in the family PSA may have been my keyword search, but don't hold me to that, but I can certainly share the video. Absolutely.
Perfect, perfect. And then so just jumping into some of the other questions. One question was, are schools willing to let education be presented on this? So just discussing gambling, problem gambling, and how do we get the word out in education to young people?
Wow, you know, one of the challenges we've seen, and coming from New Jersey, where I was with the New Jersey Council, we had a problem getting into the schools. And the way we kind of cracked that initially, superintendents and principals didn't want to think that there was gambling going on in school. Oh, our kids aren't old enough and that's not a problem here. So what we started doing is going around the side by saying, okay, so they're not gambling, but let me ask you a question. Do your kids play video games? Oh yeah, kids play video games all the time. Oh, great. Did you know that there's gambling mechanics in video games that teach kids how to gamble at an early age? And they said, really? So we started having some dialogue around that. And I said, listen, we'll come in, do a classroom session. We're going to talk about video gaming, the convergence with gambling, and we'll talk about some steps and measures, some appropriate risk taking, those types of things. And they said, okay, that sounds good. And before you know it, right before COVID hit, New Jersey Council, I think, did about 140 to 150 school-based presentations. So we went from not getting allowed in to finding out a way to get in. And as gambling is expanding, we can talk about daily fantasy sports. We can talk about day trading and gambling. You can talk about other things that young people are involved in. And as long as you rope in risk-taking, decision-making, and coping and life skills, they'll generally let you in. That's what our experience has been.
Excellent, excellent. Thank you so much for sharing. Another question I want to bring up is someone asked, does anyone know about financial literacy information customized for problem gamblers? Most of the financial literature stuff I've looked into is about making budgets, how credit works, saving and investing, how taxes work, things like that. So just kind of asking if you have any information on financial literacy programs and where people can look for those.
That's a need. That's a glaring need. And so the past month and a half since I've joined the EPIC, I've been out to Colorado and had meetings with the Financial Planning Association, the Monetary Endowment for Financial Education, as well as some other colleges and universities, because we see this as a concern. NCPG actually did a project back in 2000, about 21 years ago, about the gambler and their finances. And I stumbled across that book and this document, and it needs to be updated. It needs to be revamped. And so we've started working with agencies and organizations that teach financial literacy and education in hopes of starting to do a research project or developing some content that can be shared. The challenge is without a national or federal policy on gambling, it's hard to get funding and resources for these initiatives. So they either have to come through endowment, they have to come from supported by the operator, they have to come from other private sources of funding oftentimes. I think that from time to time, you'll see grants pop up at the state level. You'll also see banking sector, which is another great opportunity. When you see the Bank of America, the Wells Fargos, the PNC banks, the major banking institutions, they want to encourage financial literacy and education amongst various populations. And if we start engaging them and reaching out, I'm thinking we can start to get a little bit more money driven towards research and education. But it's an uphill battle, but not one that's unattainable. We need to have this at the school. So the CDC needs to adopt it in the curriculum for schools across the country. We also need to make sure that if we're using an evidence-based program like Stack Deck, which is the only one that's really used in the United States, and it's being revamped and piloted out of North Carolina, that needs to contain some financial awareness and education. We just need to reach our youth earlier on these topics. It needs to be brought up, and it's a glaring hole, but it's one of those holes that from a prevention standpoint is so necessary so that when kids turn 21, they understand a relationship with money and finances.
Right. Thank you so much. There are just glowing reviews in the chat box. It is 12:53. I'm not sure if we have time for one more question, but there is one that just came through, so I'll ask it and we'll make it our last one for the day. The question is, can you speak to the recent announcement of a $6 million grant to the National Council of Problem Gambling from the NFL?
Well, I never want to speak for Keith, but just from my lens, I think it's great to see a major professional sports league putting their money where their mouth is, in a way. We see partnerships across the board. We know gambling operators are partnering with the leagues. We know even gambling operators are partnering with NCAA and universities. Caesars with LSU, PointsBet with University of Colorado Boulder. So we're starting to see more partnerships and collaboration. I think it's a positive because I think once the NFL has now made that announcement, I would not be surprised in the months and years that follow if you start seeing NASCAR, PGA, MLB, NHL, NBA start to follow suit. And this is part of a broader issue of social and corporate responsibility. People need to do their part. If you're making revenue and if you're offering a product where there's potential for harm from those who engage in gambling on those products, there should always be money set aside, not just for the person who gambles, but as we saw in the video, for the loved ones and the family members. There is so much impacted when someone develops a gambling problem. We need to have those resources. We need to have education. We need to have intervention, treatment, more counselors. Gambling counselors are so difficult to find in certain times. Just in New Mexico right now, there's 2 ICGCs or two gambling counselors in El Paso, Texas, which is right over the border. But New Mexico has very few gambling counselors, right? Colorado has very few gambling counselors. We need more people to help, and we need more education around what to look for and reduce the stigma, right? Reducing stigma goes a long way in having people admit and ask for help, ask for someone to talk to. So I think the NFL partnership will be great for the industry, and I think there will be more to come.
That was perfect. That was excellent. Again, everyone, thank you so much for joining us today for the wild world of sports gambling. I think we all can agree it definitely is a wild world, but as we have this information moving forward, we can all work together to really move forward and make some really positive change.